Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Rugby Swag. We got a great show for you today. Yo, we are going to be talking about the biggest news of the day. Toronto is over. Man, on top of that, yo, look, big things happen in Premiership Rugby. Maro Itoje may not be a Saracen anymore. Man, we're looking into USA Rugby. Are they ready for the Rugby World Cup 2031? And we have new hires. First time we got a U.S. hire for USA Rugby with Brandon Sparks taking over head of women's high performance. And then we're going to be looking at a little bit of information of the Challenger Series as well as Dubai Sevens. We got all this and so much more coming up in this episode of Rugby Swag. But in the meantime, yo, let's take a look and let's get to this intro.
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team. And I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
And I walk around with a rugby ball sometimes and they're like, what is this child on?
It looked like it was a heavy hit.
It's up, it's not up.
You know, that's the first time I played like professionally.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And those two Scottish guys, and I said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
That rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes, all cultural aspects.
He looked at me and he said, "You guys are awesome."
Yo, you guys are awesome, and I am so happy to have you guys here for another episode of Rugby Swag. My name is Gift Time and Bailu. Yo, this is the show where we talk about the people who are doing things, making things, or getting things happening in rugby and the news that goes along with it, because there is just so much news that's happening along with this. Like, I can't even begin to pretend. But look, before we even get started, I want to make sure you guys are staying in line with everything, and I want to make sure y'all are going to be sending and letting your people know about what's going on. You can absolutely check us out on Rugby Swag Show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Gift Time Rugby on YouTube, youtube.com/GiftTimeRugby. Of course, you can only find us over at on Instagram, Rugby Swag Show. Find us on X, which is where I'm posting probably the most right now, at Gift A Bailu. Facebook, Gift Time Rugby. YouTube, Gift Time Rugby. TikTok, Gift Time Rugby, and Twitch, Gift Time Rugby. But y'all, look, it's not just for those who are the visually capable. Sometimes you just got to sit back, listen to this while you're in the car getting ready for another day, and you're just trying to be able to make sure you can get the what's up of the what's up. You guys can listen to this on Spotify, and definitely check it out, Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. But of course, because we do this live, and when you get a chance to check this out live, we will be always capable here on YouTube, Twitch, and of course, YouTube, Facebook as well. So I don't want to let you guys feel like you're being extended. And if you are checking the live, absolutely come comment in, because the engagement and of course the conversation is what this is all about. Not just my opinion, it's your opinion of my opinion of your opinion, going through all this and trying to see what we got, making happen from there. All right, y'all. So before we get started, I want to just make sure that we're taken care of by our people who take care of us first. So we'll be right back with our first subject of the day after these messages. Yo, I'm going to let you get right back to it, but I want to talk to you about one of my favorite brands that are out there right now. Actually, I'm going to show you right quick. This is ketogenic coconut bread mix. This is a specialty flour blend that allows me to be able to eat almost whatever cakes that I want. Now, coconut is not typically one of my favorite flavors, but this has absolutely killed. And it's not just because it has great taste, not because it's just easy to make, but it's because it is absolutely not going to destroy my stomach. It is gluten-free, but not nasty. This is something that has been going on, and this company, Health Enhanced Food, has so many other options to be able to do and provide and customize to the needs that I want it to. And this is something that I think we all know, especially in this world. It's hard to eat grain flour nowadays.
It's not good. It's destroying the stomach. People are getting new and new diseases, and you need to have some new alternatives. So I suggest definitely go check out Health Enhanced Foods. See what kind of bread you can make. And no, it takes 20 minutes to be able to make something from it. They have a slew of options, and they are well knowledgeable in their ingredients. Everything is transparent. Everything is made in the U.S. and then some. So in the meantime, if you guys could support the show and go to Health Enhanced Food, and you can use coupon code RugbySwag to be able to get 10% off your first purchase order. That's Rugby Swag. And you guys can go ahead and get your bread journey going on today. That's just your cakes, your pies, your bread, and of course, with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming around, you're going to need it. HealthEnhancedFoods.com. Let's get back to it.
All right, so, we are back. Let's kick it in right away. Biggest news that we have happening in rugby. The Toronto Arrows are done. Done. Finito. Arrivederci. And big news dropped just yesterday. All right, Pints and Scrums, shout out to them, being able to drop the early news that the Canadian MLR team, the only MLR team outside the USA, is no longer going to be in operations. And everybody's just sitting back wondering what is happening. How could this be? Now, there's been talks. And I don't think it's any surprise that there's been a lot of struggle that's going on with the MLR. But this one is a little less about the MLR and a little bit more about the late owner, Bill Webb, who passed away this year in August. And what the ripple effects of his loss really stands out to be. So if you guys don't know, the Toronto Arrows were put together by Bill Webb, a long-time rugby fan, one of the wealthiest in the ownership groups, and a guy who was just absolutely dedicated to making this absolutely work. And whenever he passed away suddenly, and I don't, a lot of people said that maybe he was sicker than what he hid, but it seems to have been very sudden in terms of the community. There was supposed to be at least a trust to be able to protect this rugby entity, because this is his love. His widow obviously gets the inheritance from his companies and his benefactors, but this club was supposed to be a bit of a protection. From what I'm understanding from my sources, is that Bill Webb had the Toronto Arrows were under the listing that they were about to go push some things out to investors, to be able to determine, whether they can get some buy-in to the club and, be able to continue the club outside of Bill Webb's adoration from it. This is talking about from a business standpoint. And it seems that was not the situation that ended up going through. The Arrows were in a position where we've seen them the last few years. They haven't been particularly good, but again, it seems like they had a loyal base. But this is the MLR. And if you're looking at it very potentially, again, this is just taking it from my back end sources, maybe not, but it doesn't look like this was probably a very objective investment. And there's some things that are also happening within the MLR that are occurring. We know a lot of the players' unions, and the players' union creation is now kicking in a little bit, and that adds another factor into what's going on with the MLR and what's happening with Bill Webb, with the Toronto Arrows. And with this team, you're talking about a team that is outside the U.S. In a league that's losing about $5 million per team per year, and a guy that literally was doing this as almost a pure passion project, because there's no profit in the MLR. There's no profit. It is hope, prayers, and try and put out a product that would be up. And I know if a lot of people don't realize, Bill Webb was a really major contributor to a lot of the financial and health care situations that were going on in MLR. So his loss really created a ripple effect on everything. So from as I understood, this is something that came with the investors, and investors decided this isn't a good investment anymore. And I'm going to take it that the trust that Bill Wedd had, even though this was under his will, we're saying we can't, in good faith, continue to invest in this club as the way it is. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to allow this to continue. And Toronto is out now. Toronto did put out a message to the people about what they felt was, at least an explanation for what's going on here. Let's see if we can pull this up a little bit and read it off for you guys. But it's really heartbreaking, to say the least. It's incredibly heartbreaking because this was a team that, again, was a passion project. The Canadian team fan base was, very loyal in all intents and purposes, incredibly loyal. And they were at least having a crowd, even though they had been moving around between here in Atlanta during the pandemic, and then obviously we're having their struggles. But remember that first year where they were, championship contenders. But the system note that the Arrows ended up leaving for the constituents, which essentially is, all right, it is with heavy hearts we formally announced that the Arrows will not participate in the 2024 MLR season. Despite extensive efforts carrying on following the passing of Bill Webb was simply too great a challenge for the club to overcome. We are working with the league office and contracted players regarding the next steps. And in the spirit of the club's co-founder, we are also working with partners regarding the Arrows Academy and the continued development of Canadian rugby talent. To our fans, friends, partners, and broader rugby community, thank you for your support over the years as it relates to ticket refunds and other such matters. We will provide further updates and details in the next coming weeks. So you're talking about a situation where it's just very, very, very difficult to be able to put in. Now, what does this mean in terms of all of MLR? Well, we know for one thing, with the divisions that was provided to us a couple weeks ago, now we're back to even 12-team divisions and 12-team league with 4 teams per division. Now that the Toronto Arrows are out, thank God that Miami Sharks are in, so that there's at least still some evenness in this, because dropping to 11 is a lot. It's a lot. But it does have to speak a lot to the solvency of the MLR right now, and really rugby in general, because we're seeing this same effect that's going on with MLR occurring with Premiership Rugby. And we kind of keep top 14 and Japan League out of it, but the model that's overall going for rugby around the world, especially professional rugby, is so precarious right now, incredibly precarious. So we're losing now for USA, for the MLR. We've lost Colorado Raptors as they exited. They didn't fold, but they exited. Now we have Toronto Arrows, and of course we know about the infamous exit of Austin and Los Angeles Giltinis and Gilgronis, respectively. Thank God for the loss of those names. Now, we know LA's got their team back anyways, and we'll find out an actual, title for them. But it's still the constriction and growth that's going on within the MLR it's a little bit scary, to say the least. It's a little bit scary because it's not it's not a profitable league right now. There's also been, because we're talking about things that are going on in the internet's world, that, this is part of the process of growing a league. And to some extent, it's true and it's not true. I remember it was on one of the threads we talk about rugby. There was a conversation about the NFL and how, there's been growth and development when it comes to that. For example, the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL used to be the Baltimore Colts before they moved. The Baltimore Ravens used to be the Cleveland Browns before Paul Brown moved them over to Baltimore in the secret of the night. And then ultimately a new Cleveland team got brought back in 1999. The development of the Cincinnati Bengals back in the 70s, the precarious situation that the Green Bay Packers had over time. So we know these happen in sports. Even in NBA, the Utah Jazz used to be the New Orleans Jazz before they moved up, and then the Charlotte Hornets moved down to New Orleans back in 2000, and then we got the Charlotte team. And so you have these constrictions and expansions. So that is true within professional sports. The unfortunate side is typically if you have the capabilities to be able to pay for that. And I think a little bit, even though the buying power is a lot less now, I do think that the cost for having a professional team 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago was significantly less than it is now. And the expectations of what you would have from a professional team are a lot less. So, and even the culture with it is so much different. So entering into the professional space is big. Entering into the professional space and an expectation of a loss is also expected. Going in with a loss that is monumentally increasing each year, and now you have a necessary but also very unfortunate situation where you have a players union that can be created that would set specific salary cap and trading requirements that might not be capable for a league that's at this point, because it simply does not have the investment cycles that it requires. So, I remember talking with my boy, hey, shout out to Mick Feely. Guys can check him out on a couple of our podcasts. But, we were talking about this in terms of what's going on even with Premiership Rugby, where you have this expectation that if you provide a product and you continue to build to try and attempt to get your typical TV distribution deals, if you don't have the mass audience to be able to solve that, or to be able to purchase out the properties or products that are needed to be able to cover the cost needed to be paid for a league, it makes it entirely difficult to receive the money and the value that you actually are expecting. Like that's really just it. Like it's a money and value situation right now. So, this is not me advocating against a players union, and this is not me saying that the owners are in their own problem of creation. Like, again, we're talking about the expectations versus the realities. But the thing is, this league and rugby right now, the models are not quite working out. And it's why we're starting to see so many competitions suddenly pop out, because there needs to be more product in terms of competition. But the question goes, are we creating enough of a spectator base underneath it? Do you think that we have enough from the youth rugby side? There's, we've seen the presented numbers, 1.5 million, 800,000. There's probably about 400 million fans, but are those the actual numbers? Like, are we trying to cook the books a little bit because we're not doing this stuff at the ground level? We talked about before in a further past episodes, Augustin Pichot, who spoke on the lack of growth inside these markets that are having increased populations: Brazil, Nigeria, India, China. We tap into Japan, but honestly, even Japan's population isn't fully tapped in. They might have a great professional league that is now a little bit different than what it used to be in the past, but it's a lot different than what it used to be in the past, but it's not tapped into the population. Even we've seen constriction within England, so let alone the US and the potential that it has. We're also seeing constriction, especially after the pandemic, about the numbers, and the numbers are still questionable as we're growing. And so you ask, like, what are we doing to build back the grassroots population? And we're not just talking about club, even high school. but we're talking about, the kids level, and we're not talking about necessarily being on the field. It's creating that base across the board. So all these problems add into what is happening with Toronto Raptors, and subsequently, what ends up happening with a team like the Wasps. What happened with a team like the London Irish? What happened with a team like the Worcester Warriors? What's now happening with the Toronto Arrows? And what could still happen to a number of other clubs? Because there's still a lot of things that are going on that are not quite solved yet. So all I'm saying is this is a precarious situation. It's not as simple as, well, do we have enough fans, or are the stadiums even filled up? We even got to think the economics. And a lot of people don't care about economics or that. They just want to be like, yo, just put out a product, let me be able to see it, and then we go. But the key is like, there's more to being able to put together, especially a professional sports team. And look, let's add one more element. The rise of international for World Rugby and their abilities to be able to create more money also puts a damper into how much time gets put into the professional leagues. Because not only do your best players get taken out, but on top of that, you have colliding schedules. And we see this with Six Nations. We see this with the Rugby Championships and how it affects Super Rugby. We've seen it with Top 14, even with just this Rugby World Cup. Like, there's so many collisions and a contrast that go to rugby right now in the U.S., in the world, that it's making it a very difficult business model to hold on. And I know we all want to be like, yo, we need to do this for the love of the game. We need to be able to grow because the passion, and I 100% agree. But then at the same time, you can't have some of these teams that you want to have. You can't really do some of these major moves that you want to be able to make happen. And now you got this heart-pumping situation where it's just not leveraging out correctly. So let me know what you guys think on this. For me, it's devastating that the Toronto Arrows are going, especially after the guy who made them put literally his heart and soul into the creation of this thing, doing things he didn't even have to do to make this league work, to lose his club not even barely 4 months after his passing. It's just, I feel so I feel bad for my Canadians. And I love to make fun of some Canadians. If you've been listening to this, I will make fun of some Canadians. I made fun of the Toronto Arrows a lot, but I did that out of pure rivalry, not because I want them to go. So let me know what you guys think on this one, man. Where do you think the league needs to go now as they're getting ready to present for this next 2024 year, and what needs to be held together to keep it going on? Because look, we can always say TV deals, put it on ESPN, but if you guys know, like, a lot of people don't know, sometimes you got to pay. A lot of times you pay to be on ESPN. The production costs something, or at Fox or any of these licenses. And unless there's something that's valuable that they want to pay out into, it's hard to be able to say, okay, well, they're going to give us a distribution deal. Like, those don't work. And even we know the TV markets are going crazy right now. We see what's happening with Disney. We look at the books when it comes to Comcast. Look at it when it comes to Paramount. Like, these things are all precarious in this streaming world. So there's ways that need to be done, but are we really ready to have that conversation? I'm going to try and bring some people on that are good for having that for the future, but just want you to think, let me know your guys' thoughts on it. Sad situation overall. But speaking of sad situations overall, we got another one that I think is just as concerning as anything else, which is Maro Itoje is potentially going to be done with the Saracens. Like, he's going to be done with the Saracens. We're talking about one of the most popular English rugby players, arguably of all time. One of the most successful English rugby players at a young age of all time. Shout out Nigerians over here. Maro Itoje, a lock for England rugby. He is a lock for the Saracens. This man has been a 2-time British and Irish Lions. He has been considered top rugby players in the world. This guy is an absolute monster. But why is it happening? Well, it sounds like the Saracens are looking to it looks like the Saracens offered him a 50% salary cut to continue playing. I don't know about you guys, but hard to say, hey, look, take away half my salary and don't worry, I'm gonna continue playing with you. Oh, also while you're also gonna pay the other guy that same amount. Now, this is again a complex situation because there's two things that are at hand. Number one, there is offers from top 14 that are being provided to Maro Itoje. We got played by Racing 92, and we got some play by Lyon. All right. The other thing that's about this is that the Premiership Rugby is entering into a potential salary cap. I have to put the reporting on this that I found was from planetrugby.com, just so you guys know, actually a really great source outside the US. But this one is one that is big. Now, according to the reports right now, looks like Maro Itoje is making about 800,000 per year, and they were asking him to go down to 400,000. And I know the average person is going to go like, oh man, I don't even make that. Inflation, money's hard, blah, blah, blah. Why are you struggling? But again, we all have different jobs for different expectations. So you work within the element that's there. And you're talking about the RFU. And while the RFU is wealthy and Premiership Rugby exists, we know obviously there's so much constriction that is happening because there's financial issues. So from the series component, which also speaks to the fact that there is a salary cap that is looking to be put into place, this is still wild, wild for them to ask of Itoje, considering all the accolades that he's already done, and that's on top of the gains that he is getting done. Yo, shout out to my boy Caleb. Speaking on, Maro is getting underpaid big time, especially for the popularity that is Caleb Jones. Much appreciated. Absolutely is. But that's the thing. So you're going 800,000 to 400,000. You're talking about teams that are playing basically, I would say, more than 18 games per season, because while their season technically goes through, you go through one rotation of a season, the next season starts within like 2-3 months. So you're really not getting a lot of rest time and putting a lot of miles on the body, on top of the things that added to it, which is being called for the English team, being called to the British and Irish Lions, being named World Rugby player accolades. But what's particularly interesting here is that, like I said, top 14 is calling for him. And it looks like he's calling for $1 million a year, which is, as a professional player, and we in the US especially, we see our professional players get paid, especially in the NBA, NFL, top notch. You obviously see it with football, soccer, association football itself, the numbers that are getting paid. Obviously, rugby is nowhere near either one of those, any of those sports. Even hockey is not even close to it in hockey. But $1 million a year is crazy low. But it's acceptable. It would be high within the rugby standard. I think the highest was homeboy that came out of New Zealand. What's his name? The scrum half for the 2015 team. Oh my goodness. Why am I forgetting his name? Not the scrum half. I'm sorry. The fly halfback, the fullback that played for look, I gotta look it up because I'm gonna feel stupid, and I know everybody knows who it is if they know. Like, if you know, you know. Like, I know you know. It's driving me crazy right now. It was oh my goodness, Dan Carter. Oh my goodness, I know. I should know that off the bat. Like, that, it's such an obvious. Sometimes you get lost in the names. But even Dan Carter, when he went to top 14, was just barely getting maybe 2 million, or maybe his whole deal was like somewhere like 4 million for his time during the top 14. So like the $1 million a year is just barely going off. Right. It was 500,000 for basically 7 months, maybe 750,000. He was barely getting anything towards the end of his career. But like, it's another exodus over to top 14, and apparently they got the money to throw around to be able to do it. And it's not going to be the first person. We've seen it with Sia Khaleesi leaving South Africa, going up to Racing 92, and obviously making an impact. But that money plays a huge game, and I wonder if we're going to see more constriction, more exits from other leagues going into top 14. It's an interesting situation. So I don't know how you guys feel on this. I think this would be a devastating loss if Maro Itoje were to end up leaving Saracens, or at least leaving the Premiership Rugby, because if they're already crumbling like that, losing major star power like that adds viewers into the game is going to be a real problem. And I know the Saracens are one of the biggest brands in Premiership Rugby. I get it, but the man is legitimately an icon, and you don't get very many of those in rugby right now. There's just simply not that many, especially in England, and in place where they're having a losing participation rate among next generation fans. So let me know what your guys' thoughts on this is. I want to know where you guys feel like the league is actually going when it comes to this situation. Is there a chance to be able to get them? Because again, we've already seen 3 major rugby clubs just completely collapse within the last year and a half. Losing major players is not going to help the situation. And the international world schedule, the World Nations Cup, is not going to help anything either. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are on that. And in the meantime, look, I'm going to be right back. We got some ads for you. Please take a listen. And if you don't, we'll see you in the next subject. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is just the Break Train sending out a personal little video diary to all you people out there, where I am going to document me riding most of the way between Singapore and Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
I needed help, and it came from Louisiana.
We in Singapore, baby!
Gift from Gift Time Rugby USA is a extroverted tour de force. But what unites us is a hunger for adventure.
Off to KL, Kuala Lumpur. Woo! Yeah! Woo!
Gift, where are we?
We're in Vietnam!
Morning, Vietnam! Mount Fuji, baby!
Our love of Asian rugby culture.
1, 2, 3, center! Yeah!
Rugby is starting to develop here in Cambodia for women as well.
Valkyries, the mighty, mighty Valkyries!
We're out here, we're running out of energy, we're running out of money, and we're feeling isolated. And yet at that critical moment, friends, family, sometimes complete strangers come on board. Before you know it, we're back in the game.
Tokyo, here we come!
Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Watch the full adventure at crugby.vhx.tv. That's C like SEE rugby.vhx.tv. Welcome back. Yo, we got the next big story coming up for you right now. That is USA, whether it is absolutely ready for the Rugby World Cup 2031. Now, why did this subject come up? I know we've talked about this, has been talked to death. Oh my God, is the USA going to be able to get it? We're going to have it. Well, there's a conversation that happened on a podcast known as The Good, The Bad, and The Rugby, was featuring Dan Lyles of AEG Rugby, former USA Rugby legend himself, and then Gareth Reese. And they were proposing this question. And let me show you what it's about first, and then we'll talk about it next.
is it going to happen? Is the next 8 years going to see fully fit, fully firing, and properly competitive US and Canada teams arrive at 2031, or are we all still going to be here in another 8 years?
The moment that the US Eagles didn't qualify for this World Cup, genuinely wanted them to be there because they're our cousins and we suffer the same stuff. That was huge because it actually did shine a proper light. We're actually going to hold a World Cup in France, and Canada and US aren't going to be there. First time Canada's missed, US has only missed one other time. So yes, I think the conversations are real. I think especially World Rugby and a few of the other partners, and people are talking to us that haven't talked to us before. I genuinely think that the dialogue's there, but there's got to be commitment alongside it. We've seen it in the women's game, just to mention that again. I mean, there's been some real growth, and there's actually a bit of a plan there. But in the men's game, there's so many forces. I think the question's a fair one. Are we going to be able to identify a strategy, but then execute and get the right parties in behind it? Because the North American strategy is a must because of where we're going for a World Cup in 2 stops, and it's going to pay off.
Now, for me, this is one that I'm a little bit pushed on one side and the next simply because of the fact that I don't think that there is a requirement that you need to be great at rugby to be able to do the Rugby World Cup in the U.S. I do think that there is something in terms of being able to have a conversation about having the Rugby World Cup, U.S. ready for the Rugby World Cup to enter, but not necessarily a USA rugby, team that's ready. Obviously, we're going to be automatically, added in regardless because we're host country. So that's not going to ever be the issue. But I think there is something that's been brought up, and it's something that, like I said, I'm going to say my opinion on it and on where it is. When it comes to the Rugby World Cup, for 2031, the idea for this is, the USA has one of the richest populations by terms of economy, not necessarily per person, but by terms of economy, one of the richest nations, by terms of the potential of population. We have that as well too, more or less, in potential of population. And of course, we have the element of having a infrastructure as a U.S. that can handle major events as this, and they can also create pop culture developments, almost in the same guise as, even though for us as NFL fans, we always knew who he was, but a Travis Kelce connecting with a Taylor Swift. By definition, Travis Kelce is already famous, but you add it with a Taylor Swift, and all of a sudden there's an escalation in the knowledge and the credibility of the personality and the player as more than just this one insular niche product. So what we're seeing with World Rugby and wanting to bring it to the US is that same exact guys. Now, the problem that I'm having with the argument and the conversations are that on one hand of it, I think there's too many people that feel like the US would not be a good testing ground simply because rugby is not in the same guise as maybe France or New Zealand or something like that. And then on the other hand, I think there's the conversation of our exaggeration of who we are as a USA rugby community in bed. Not to say that we don't have passionate fans. We legitimately do. But it's about what our actual numbers are. From my position, I think both arguments are obviously faulty. From those who are outside the country and think that the USA isn't the ground to do it. Honest to God, it doesn't matter whether there's USA fans or not. You have an economy, you have a media base that by leaps and bounds will do numbers on what the Rugby World Cup will do. If doing Japan, that is one of the media beds. It's not even a rugby country. I need people to understand, when you went to the Rugby World Cup in Japan, it didn't get popular because Japan's a rugby country. It got popular because they managed to be such amazing service, and they had prepped the population for it. But the rugby itself, even though now Japan's, a tier 1 country, but the population as a whole, outside of a certain component of Tokyo, really was not knowledgeable for the Rugby World Cup. And they just educated them really within 2-3 years. They really educated them a whole lot. So there's not this need where it's like, well, the USA didn't make the Rugby World Cup in 2023, so we have no idea whether or not we're going to be able to field anything together for 2031. No. That will be honestly, if you can do well in Paris with all the bed bugs and everything that was happening over there, and you think just because France is number one team that it shot it up, like, yo, question the numbers. I'm just saying, question those numbers because it's a different situation. I know they had it, but I think a lot of those numbers are based off of inflation. But if you think that can happen there and not in the US, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. Like you're coming into it in the 3 years after the Olympics. It's going to be what 5 years after the after the World Cup. It is going to be within another proximity of the Women's Rugby World Cup, of the Women's World Cup. Like, yo, the momentum is going to be more than enough there. The question is, are you going to do the marketing correctly to get there? That has nothing to do with USA Rugby's performance capabilities. Whether we make it or perform there or not is neither here nor there. It is what is the story that's going to lead into it? How do we exaggerate it and make sure that World Rugby is attaching with the partners needed to build the exaggeration of the Rugby World Cup? Because it's a nations game. Like, yo, as long as it's national, the USA is going to be all in for it one way or another. That's neither here nor there, right? It's going to be in for it. But we need to know what is that next move. Now, in terms of what we're talking about from USA Rugby, this is something that Dan Lyle said, and I want to speak in on this one just to show a point here. So let's look at what Dan Lyle this was.
I saw so many Americans, the legends that sell the merchandise. They said despite U.S. not being there, there are 30 million identifiable fans in the United States.
Wow.
You know, in the expat world and the rugby world, I saw so many Americans, the legends that sell the merchandise. They said the second most profitable market for them is the United States, and they were missing the United States in this World Cup on the ground by way of merchandise sales.
Randomly, I sat next to, in both semis and quarters, I sat next to someone from America, one from South Carolina and one from Arizona. And I was like, why are you even here? They said, well, we love rugby.
So what you guys don't realize is that without a Six Nations or whatever you got in your country, North America, this is it. This is the pinnacle, and we need to change that. We need to have other pinnacle destination events so the South Carolina fan can come support something on their own continent.
I heard something, it's 3.9% of the USA population are rugby fans, which doesn't sound like much, but then you put it into 400 million people, it's almost 16 million people who love rugby. And if you put 16 million people on a rugby geographic map, that's just the biggest country in the world.
Yeah, so that's where I go back to. I don't like us playing with these numbers because 16 million fans. Hey man, we have yet to see that on any demarcation. Like 3.9% is wild. I would make an argument that we probably are under 1% of the U.S. population in terms of fandom. Like, it would be wild to think that we're anywhere close to it. So I get a little bit iffy when it comes to that. And again, it doesn't mean that it can't get there or that we don't need to have those, that we can't get to know. I'm just saying that we need to not act like that's an actual fact and not just a estimation based off of like a culmination of events that we've played, registration at an end, and then like, you know, social media and that, like, yo, 16 million is wild. Because if we had 16 million, we would be still low, but it would be far more on par with more production and sales merch that goes through to different tournaments and games. I'm just saying, like, this, it's why I don't think we need to play either way. All our job is that we need to make sure that we are creating the best storyline, the best entertainment. We are literally needing to blow the Rugby World Cup out of the water in comparison to any other nation that's done, not in performance on the field, but in presentation of the game. I mean, it needs to be 2012 Beijing introduction, mesmerizing altogether. It needs to be like, yo, the Olympics, what? No, we came with it. And that is where our goal is. That's what the USA is legitimately capable of doing. And that will be able to bring fans. I know we did this, we talked about this with the 1996 World Cup when it came to Atlanta, and that was kind of the opening for Major League Soccer and that. But again, there was already kind of a push that was going towards it. So, you know, it's not the same thing, even though it feels like you're talking the same network. But it's not the same thing. And I just want these arguments to be deaded that the U.S. should lose it. Like, World Rugby definitely needs us. It definitely needs the USA to be able to support itself and surpass the $6 billion, arguably, that it did. Well, really, it did like $2 billion in Japan and made like another $4 billion, arguably, in attention for the economy of Japan, something to that effect. So they're using that as a measurement item. And I don't know what the numbers are for Paris. They're saying it's larger, but again, I don't know. I'd have questions. Great finals, great ending. Obviously, we know how it all went. In my opinion, probably one of the better ones. But again, was the interest fully there? How much was it really promoted? I don't feel like it was promoted overtly well. But again, I'm in the U.S. and actually I was in Brazil in that one. So, you know, it's to be determined when it comes to that. But that argument, dead it. You need to get it there, but we need to do our part in not just educating the population, but making sure that we put on the best show ever. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on this are. I want to see where you guys are going with each one of these. And of course, you know, what is your feelings for the future of the Rugby World Cup for 2031 and then subsequently 2033 for the Women's Rugby World Cup? Like, do you guys feel like the USA can be ready within the next, we're talking 2023, in the next 9 years? Actually, let's keep it a buck. Keep it up almost 8 years before it's able to go. Your thoughts, man. Let me know your thoughts on it. All right. And I'm actually going to make this our last one because I got places I got to go. And unfortunately, this show has to come to an end soon. So I want to talk about the new hiring of Brandon Sparks for USA Rugby's women's high performance manager position. Now, I think the first thing I have to say, first and foremost, is wow, congratulations. We finally got a U.S. person in a position of power to be a part of the whole USA structure. Congratulations, U.S. We finally kind of kept something at home. You know, let's get Scott Lawrence on the call next one. All right. But I think this one is also really important because you got a guy like Brandon Sparks who's, already has his connections with the MLR and has built a structure at the MLR with the academy system of the Utah Warriors. And of course, put a, competitive team on the field each year during his time as general manager for the Utah Warriors. So I think that there's something that goes along with that. There's history of him having leadership on programs like University of Michigan, the Berkeley All Blues, the Women's Premier League, and getting a guy who seems to know the lay of the land. But what is more important is just being able to have a clear understanding of what it takes to get them from point A to point B. And I think with the women's side, which has been one of the least funded, least appreciated, but most successful sides of rugby for us. I think for the sevens team, we know this. Our sevens team is been dominant in so many aspects outside of the Olympics, where we seem to flop a little bit in that. We do flop in that, but within the HSBC structure, within qualifiers and head-to-head games, USA women have definitely been bar none. And then from the 15 side, obviously we're in a rebuild. Since the pandemic has not been particularly spectacular, but again, we're talking about budget issues. We're talking about a team that literally pays to go play. which is insane, which is different than the sevens team that gets IOC money from the Olympic Committee in the USA. So it's been a little bit tougher, but we've been able to see a lot of talent growth. And I think that's one area that we can use as a model structure for what happens for the men's side, because with the women's side, and it sounds terrible to say, but it's almost like you don't care enough, so they literally can do whatever. It reminds me of whenever they did, Sony made Into the Spider-Verse for the first time, and the first one, with Miles Morales and everything like that. And you could tell that Sony, at the time of making that, did not think that that property was going to do as well as it did. So they let the directors, Chris Lloyd and the guys who made the Lego movie, they let them do what they wanted to do. And of course, you created a successful product. And now Sony's getting their hands all in it, and now they're doing too much. But you get that ability to be creative with it because people don't feel like it needs to get the funding that it truly should deserve to be. So under Brandon Sparks, and obviously now with the new head coach for the women's team, it should hopefully create a little bit more synchronization in bringing in more talent and elevating that, because we should be absolutely destroying Canada. All right, hands down. Shout out to Canada. I know they've been good. The women's side been good, but we should be destroying them. We should be number one within North America, hands down. And then Australia, I feel like we're more competitive against Australia from a sevens position. And then New Zealand obviously is the big kahuna that we need to take down. From the 15 side, we definitely need to bring in more talent and just be able to cycle in consistently. Though my feeling is still that it should be 7 sides and 15 sides should be combined, and buck the trend of separating the 15s and the 7 side. Just make sure you have depth to be able to protect the bodies. But outside of that, do what you need to do to get the best talent and get the best production and get performances, so you can let these teams be self-funded and be able to be self-reliant on making things go. And, shout out to those who have been financially able to support them, but they need the story. Like, they're doing the work. We need to not be like the women's national team for soccer. We need to give them the work, because they're holding us up while it is, But I'm looking forward to seeing what Brandon Sparks does within the community. It seemed like there was a huge praise that goes with it. Again, being part of the Utah Warriors, they set up their communication system with the lives and the videos and the draft process and updating and being able to keep communicative. I think with the women's side, the biggest creativity should be able to come from it. So a lot of pressure is on Brandon to be able to make sure he does it. And hopefully we can get him on the program and talk a little bit about it, and maybe not be so politically correct. He's a former GM, so coaches speak is very well possible. But I'm legitimately interested to see what's going to end up happening with him. Though, there's things that people have pullbacks on, coaching level. There's been talks that he's a level 2 coach that might not be particularly high, or what is, even despite working with things like the Berkeley All Blues and stuff like that. But, again, these are stuff that are just out there. In the end, you need to just make sure you have the instincts, especially at an administrative level, the instincts, the experience, and the know-how to be able to create systems that people can easily understand and can easily follow, that will filter and provide the provisions to get the best players, and not just the best players that are available based off of a cost or something like that that's there for you. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear more about this from you guys and what your thoughts are on all of this going forward. But at this time, y'all, I think this is let get this out to a commercial, and then honestly, we'll be right back.
Y'all, if you are trying to be able to get your name out, whether it's for business, whether it's for work, whether you're just trying to do something personal for a friend or family, you need to stop utilizing social media as the sole place where you put all your stuff. You don't know when the algorithms are going to change on you, and you don't know whenever the rules are going to change. So what seemed like it was okay yesterday might not be today. And what does that mean? You need to have your own home, and that means having your own website. That's where Green Geeks comes into play. Now, Green Geeks is the place where you can create and build your website in the cleanest host in the game. I'm talking about environmentally. Not only that, they'll provide you with a free domain name and free template builder so that you don't even have to think about having to create your website. I've used Green Geeks for almost a decade now, and I have been so satisfied by everything that they've been able to provide for me. No matter whether or not I know what I'm doing or I don't, they have 24/7 support for me every single time I need a question answered, or I need something to be changed, or I need to be updated on any information. And the best part about this is that I'm not limited to any of the websites that need to be used. It uses a WordPress foundation, which allows me to have access to limitless amounts of templates that are available to be able to use for any version of a website that I want to have. And the best thing about it, it costs me less than $5 per month to do. And that can be the same for you. All I needed to do is click the link in the bio. If you're listening, definitely click it in the description. And if you're watching, definitely click it in the description as well. But you guys, this is something that everybody should do. You don't have to just do e-commerce. Your website is the place where you have control over what you want. That's your house, not their house. And go ahead and get that with Green Geeks. Once again, click the link in the description to be able to get your first year at under $5 per month. Guys, it's the best decision. I'm telling you. Let's get back to it.
Y'all, all right, y'all. Yo, I just want to say a couple more subjects I had wanted to do, but honestly, time's kind of run out at this point. So we're going to have to come back to it another time. But y'all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen, to watch, to see what we have going on. Of course, I still invite you guys to check out some of our past interviews. Obviously, I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving as well. We're going to be bringing in those interviews back again as this new year comes up. I want to thank you guys for definitely sharing and talking and conversing. It means the most to me in all that it's done. In the meantime, most importantly, I hope that you guys are happy. I hope that you guys are healthy. And most importantly, I hope that you know that you are truly highly favored. Until next time, y'all. Cheers.